I am so honored to make your acquaintance. It lifts my spirits to share some time in my story with you. Allow me to introduce myself so we can become better acquainted. My name is Abigail Blair. Before I married my dear Robert, I was known as Abigail Pearson. To acquaint you a wee bit with my story, permit me to tell you some of my origins. I tell you this as I hold my parents in such high esteem for their strength of character and courage. I was born in Glasgow, Scotland in the year 1848. In 1852, at the wee age of 4, I was brought here to California, along with mother and father and our other 2 young Pearsons. As I'm sure you are aware, the journey across the Atlantic Ocean and then circling around the entire South American continent was terribly long and arduous. It is incredible that my dear parents had any energy left upon arrival to launch into a successful and prosperous commercial endeavor. But that is exactly what they did. My father immediately set about establishing an ice business. He would procure the ice from the higher mountains above Riverton and Icehouse Road. Aided by a team of horses, he would make the 3-day journey to the high country, cut the ice into blocks, and then bring it down to Placerville to sell to our well-to-do citizens. The ice was priced at 10 cents a pound for small pieces and $5 for 100 pounds. As you can readily see, ice was a luxury the humble folk could ill afford. Needing a place to store the ice, my father constructed a building of sturdy native stone blocks for just that purpose. In fact, that building was built so well, it still stands today, right over there on Main Street. It's called the Pearson Soda Works Building. The walls were 22 inches thick, affording the ability to maintain the needed cold temperatures so the ice would remain frozen until Papa could sell it. At the time, it was a single-story building, but much later in 1897, my devoted brother John helped Papa add a second story. That additional space enabled my father and brother to add a bottling operation so they could sell soda drinks, cider, and syrup. I hope you will forgive my pridefulness in talking about the innovative aspects my father and brother brought to the business. I have always regarded the men in my family as pioneers of creative construction and therefore luminaries in our somewhat rough little city. What made our family building stand out from so many others of the same type was it was built into a 135-foot mining tunnel that served as a deep cave conducive to holding cold temperatures. Remarkably, along with the second story addition, a water-powered lift was installed to transport the heavy cases of soda up and down between the first and second floors. Now, you may be wondering where the Blairs come into my story. Well, I helped with our family business during my 20s until I began to be courted by Robert Blair, our friend and family, our neighbor and family friend. I fell in love, and on February 15th, 1877, we were married. Robert had previously worked as a teamster, but more recently operated his family's thriving inn known as Sportsman's Hall. During those years, thousands of people in need of food and supplies while heading for the silver mines of the Washoe would stop at Sportsman's Hall in Pollock Pines to fulfill their requirements. It was quite the bustling operation. And in addition to the prosperity that this business brought us, our family grew as well, and soon we were blessed with babies, Jenny, Jessie, Robert and John. Now, I would be neglectful if I did not include telling you about my clever daughter, Jenny. In a time when few women had professions, my Jenny trained herself as an assistant to attorneys and other businessmen. Not only that, but she was a marvel at construction and an expert on repairing any broken household item. Perhaps because she was so self-sufficient, Jenny declined ever to marry and lived in our family home until her demise at age 100 years old. I would also like to sing praise for my beautiful and thoughtful daughter, Jessie. She fell in love with William Bert Kumbelic, who lived just across the street from us in the grand Kumbelic Blair house on Cedar Ravine Road. Bert took over his father's thriving clothing store on Main Street and was wed shortly thereafter to our lovely Jessie. I was beyond thrilled when Bert and Jessie started a family and built a home just a few doors down from us, also on Cedar Ravine. Jessie gave us two clever and tenacious grandsons, Robert and Alan. In fact, if you see a Kumbelic running around Placerville today, know that I am their great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, great-great-great-grandmother, and besides being Kumbelics, the blood of John Pearson and Robert Blair courses through their veins. Now, enough of my bragging about my children and grandchildren. Let me get back to my husband Robert and the Blair family. Despite the prosperity of business at Sportsman's Hall, Robert made a shift and joined his brothers John and James at the J&J Blair Lumber Company. That job was not without its pitfalls and dangers, though. Robert lost 2 fingers in a work accident and had to go about with his hand and arm in a sling for a substantial period of time. Meanwhile, the business was so prosperous, we were able to have a charming home built for us on the corner of Pacific Street and Cedar Ravine. At the risk of being immodest, I must say it was the loveliest home, as it was built with all the most modern conveniences, as well as with elegant design in all 9 rooms. At one point, we were prosperous enough for me to take Jessie and Cousin Will, along with Aunt Elise Kelly Blair, on an extensive tour of Europe. We were even able to visit family in Scotland. My, what a wonderful time we had. Besides the excitement of our travels, another exciting event for our family occurred in 1912. That was when our most famous former resident, old John Studebaker, returned to Placerville, as he always promised he would, to host a reunion for his pioneer friends who were still living. The reunion was held at the Ohio House and was the fanciest event in town. Invitations were sent out by Studebaker himself to just over 50 men, and Robert had the honor of being one of the distinguished guests. Robert didn't know Studebaker per se, but when Mr. Studebaker heard that his old friends, John and James Blair, had passed away, he invited Robert without hesitation. Robert walked down to the Ohio House with my brother, John Pearson Jr., along with our neighbors and friends, Sheriff James Madison Anderson, and his son-in-law, City District Attorney and future Superior Court Judge George Thompson. The menu was marvelous and themed with such colorful Gold Rush names as Sluice Box Tailings flavored with chicken and Dead Man's Ravine asparagus. It was such a wonderful event, and all in attendance were in fine spirits. The reunion concluded with a group photograph in front of the Ohio House, where Robert posed in the front row, just down from Studebaker. It was all so exciting. Well, as sad and difficult as this is, I am obliged to tell you that in 1921, at the age of 84, my dear Robert fell dreadfully ill. He suffered for several weeks before finally succumbing. He was so highly regarded by our town's fellow citizens that Placerville's businesses closed their doors for the entire duration of his funeral service, so all could attend. After Robert's death, my daughter Jenny moved in with me in our family home. She stayed with me until my demise at age 92 in the year 1940. Our family home still stands proudly at the corner of Cedar Ravine and Pacific Street, handsome and sturdy as ever. In fact, in 1981, our home, the Robert Blair House, was designated a historic structure by the Placerville City Council. Then, in 1985, the Cumbelic Blair House was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Later, I hear both homes were featured in beautiful Christmas paintings by a local artist known as Thomas Kincaid. Perhaps you've heard of him? We pioneer Blairs may be gone now, but our families live on. Yes, it is a lovely day to have spent some time with you and made your acquaintance.